Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again today for the Daily Update. I want to start, as always, with an update on some of the key statistics in relation to COVID-19. As at 9 o'clock this morning, I can report that there have been 13,627 positive cases confirmed. That is an increase of 141 from yesterday. A total of 1,453 patients are currently in hospital with either confirmed or suspected cases of the virus, and that is a decrease of 31 from yesterday. A total of 80 people last night were in intensive care with confirmed or suspected COVID-19, and that is a decrease of 2 since yesterday. I'm also able to confirm that since the 5th of March, a total of 3,114 patients who had tested positive for the virus have now been able to leave hospital, which of course is very happy and positive news. Unfortunately, though, I have to report that in the past 24 hours, 5 deaths have been registered of patients who had been confirmed through a test as having COVID-19. That takes the total number of deaths in Scotland under that measurement to 1,862. I want to emphasise again today that those figures should be treated with some caution. Although deaths can now be registered at weekends, registration numbers at weekends are usually relatively low, and they can be particularly low following a Sunday. So this should be taken into account when considering today's figures. And as I always do, and as I always will, I want to stress that these numbers are not just statistics and should never be seen as that. They represent individuals whose loss has been felt deeply by all of their loved ones. And I want to send again today my deepest condolences to everyone who is grieving as a result of this virus. I also want to thank, again, as I always do, our health and care workers. You're doing extraordinary work, going above and beyond the extra mile in incredibly challenging circumstances, and all of us owe you a huge debt of gratitude, and I and everyone in the Scottish Government is deeply grateful to you for everything you are doing. In a moment, I'm going to ask the Health Secretary to set out the details of a new wellbeing programme which is being launched today. That's a new programme to support the mental health of those working in our health and care sector at this difficult time. But before that, there are 2 items I want to briefly address. Firstly, the Scottish Government has today, just in the last wee while, published our second coronavirus bill. That proposed legislation includes a range of further measures to help Scotland through this pandemic. And amongst many other things, it provides additional support for unpaid carers. It ensures that carers' allowance recipients will receive an extra payment on top of the carers' allowance supplement that is paid to unpaid carers in Scotland. And this new payment will see around 83,000 carers receive an additional £230 next month to support them through this difficult period. Being a carer is incredibly demanding at the best of times, and I know that it is much more difficult right now. So I want to thank each and every one of Scotland's unpaid carers for the incredibly important role that you are playing. The bill is due to go through the Scottish Parliament in the next 2 weeks, and I hope that when it does, this additional payment, alongside the other support that we are providing, helps to make things just a little bit easier for you. The second item I want to cover today concerns the lockdown restrictions. Last night, the Prime Minister set out some of the detail of his plan for easing restrictions in England. More of the detail of that has emerged this morning and will continue to come out during the course of today. I want to reiterate that those announcements do not apply yet here in Scotland. That is not, let me stress, for any political reason. It is because the Scottish Government is not yet confident that these changes can be made safely in Scotland yet without running the risk of the virus potentially running out of control again. So Scotland's lockdown restrictions remain in place for now, and our key message remains the same. We need you to stay at home. We do not at this point want to see more businesses opening up or more people going to work. We do not yet want to see more people using public transport, and we are not yet changing who can or should be at school. The only change we've made here in Scotland is to the guidance on exercise. As I said yesterday, as of today, we've removed the once-a-day limit on exercise. It means that if you want to go for a walk more than once a day, or to go for a run and also a walk, you can now do so. That change doesn't apply if you or someone in your household has symptoms of the virus, or if you received a letter explaining that you are in the shielded group. In these cases, you should still stay at home completely. For everybody else, you still need to stay relatively close to your own home while exercising, and at all times, please stay at least 2 metres away from people from other households. I also want to stress that by exercise, we mean activities like walking or running or cycling, not at this stage sunbathing or having a picnic. This really doesn't give people a licence to meet up at the park or at the beach. It is one very minor change, but I think an important change to the existing rules. But all of the restrictions in Scotland for now remain in place. And let me just reflect for a moment on why this matters. I read this morning, as many of you might have done in the Glasgow Evening Times, the tragic story of a family from Castlemilk in Glasgow. Andy Learman has told how his mum, dad and father-in-law have all died from this virus, and he talks too of the impact on his 9-year-old daughter. Their story is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for them, but what all of us should reflect on is that it could be any one of us. That family have told their story because they want people to listen to the advice that we are giving. In today's paper, they say this: people need to realise it's real. The guidelines that are set out need to be followed. It may be them next and their families, and we would not want anyone to go through what we have had to go through. Stay in the house, social distance. That is the way to keep people you love safe. I think that is a very powerful message, and it underlines the importance of the restrictions and why we need to stick with them for now. So to close today, I want to reiterate simply, and I hope clearly, what the restrictions continue to be while our progress against this potentially deadly virus remains fragile. Except for essential purposes such as exercise, buying food or medicines, or going to do essential work that you can't do from home, you shouldn't be going out. You should stay at home. If you do go out, you should stay more than 2 metres from other people and not meet up with people from other households. You should wear a face covering if you are in a shop or in public transport, and you should isolate completely if you or someone else in your household has symptoms. I know that these restrictions continue to be extremely tough, and I know that hearing talk about easing the lockdown makes them seem probably even tougher. But please, I am asking you for now to stick with it. We are making progress. The figures I've reported to you today give further evidence of that. But to combat this virus, we still need to stay apart from each other. We still need to stay at home. And the thing is, the more we do that now, the sooner we will be able to ease more of these restrictions. I set out yesterday the further changes that we are considering making as soon as we judge it safe to do so. We all want to see our friends and families. We all miss them more with each day that passes. We all want to see children get back to school, and we all desperately want to get back to some kind of normality. Please know that I want all of that too. I want that as your First Minister, but actually I also want it as an ordinary person who is missing my own family very much indeed. But I know that we will get there more quickly if we all keep doing the right thing now. If we take our foot off the brake too soon, the real danger is that we will end up in this lockdown for longer. And worst of all, we will lose many more people along the way. None of us want that. So please be patient, and please try not to get distracted by messages from other parts of the UK. All governments across the UK are trying to do the right thing, and all of us have a responsibility to take the steps we think are right at the right time. So please, if you live in Scotland, abide by the law that applies here and follow Scottish Government guidelines. Lastly today, I also want to make a respectful plea to the media. Your scrutiny role is essential, and you perform it robustly and rightly so. But at a time like this, when health is at stake, all of us have a public duty too. Please make it clear to your readers, listeners and viewers what the actual situation is in different parts of the UK. Moving at different speeds in different parts of the UK for good evidence-based reasons need not be a cause for confusion. Indeed, other countries are also taking different steps in different areas at different times. Confusion only arises if we as politicians and the media who report on us are either unclear in what we are asking people to do, or if we give a misleading impression, even by omission, that decisions that apply to one nation only are actually UK-wide. Never has the duty on political leaders to communicate clearly been greater, and in the provision of basic public health information, I hope the media will continue, as most of you have been doing already, to appreciate the importance of that too. This matters to all of us. If we do see continued high compliance with these restrictions in Scotland for a bit longer, we will continue to slow the spread of this virus, we will protect the NHS and we will save lives, and we will all move more quickly to the day that these restrictions start to be eased. So thank you once again to all of you for doing everything that you are doing. I'll hand over now to the Chief Medical Officer, who's going to say a few words, and then, as I indicated a few moments ago, the Health Secretary is going to set out a package of wellbeing support for those who work in our health and care sector.
Thank you, First Minister. So today I want to speak to you about a clinical issue that's very important, and that's the process of anticipatory care planning, which I know can be a difficult subject for people to have conversations about. It's not a new concept, and it's been done in clinical care for many, many years. Our current understanding is that 80% of people who are affected by COVID-19 illness will have mild symptoms. However, a small number will become seriously ill and require more intensive clinical management. There's a group of people who are at much higher risk of becoming seriously unwell from coronavirus, and for that matter, other infections and health problems too. This group should be prioritised for anticipatory care planning. Anticipatory care planning provides an important opportunity for people to have conversations with carers and loved ones about the type of care that they would like to receive should they become unwell. It is this conversation and the expression of what's important to them in their care that's the important thing. The document that comes out of these conversations simply records it for others to see. So it must be done sensitively and with the quality of these conversations at the forefront of people's minds. We know that treatments for coronavirus focus on supportive measures, and that some specific care options like ventilation are of low benefit or do not help people who are already in poor health. However, there are many other aspects of care that can be discussed and planned. People may well be worried about the future, and so there's an opportunity to have a helpful conversation about what matters most to them if they become very unwell or require end-of-life care. These discussions can be extremely difficult to start, but they are important. The aim is to have an open and honest conversation with individuals, their families and carers, so that we can plan future care that matters to people as well as possible. One particularly challenging example of this is asking people about whether or not they would want to be given CPR in the event their heart should stop beating. It's a difficult conversation to have, and it needs to be done sensitively, and only if the person wants this conversation and at a time that is right for them. Some people may have very clear views about what they would want and not want to happen to them. Others may not. It's important to offer people the opportunity to talk about this when they're ready to do so. Each of these are decisions which must be taken on a person-by-person basis, weighing up all the risks and benefits led by the person's own wishes. Having these conversations in anticipation allows people to think about what choices they would wish to make in the event that decisions need to be made. These are some of the most sensitive and challenging conversations that people can have, and they're often not easy for clinicians either. But when they're done well, they contribute massively to good personalised care. When I think of some of the most important conversations that I've had with patients over the years, it's often these type of conversations that come to mind. They're a privilege for a clinician to have when done properly, and they create lasting impressions because they're about the core issues that people base their lives on. So they must be undertaken on the basis of trust, sensitivity and honesty at all times. That's the basis on which good anticipatory planning is founded.
Thank you very much, Gregor. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. Today I want to address Scotland's health and social care workforce. Every Thursday we all stand and applaud in appreciation of the work you are doing to keep us safe and well. That gesture of support is important, and I know that it is hugely appreciated. The scale of the challenge you are facing is unprecedented. Many of you will be working in unfamiliar roles. Many of you will be asked to learn new skills or work in unfamiliar ways. At the same time, you are caring for your own family. You may be personally affected by COVID-19, and you will undoubtedly have your own anxieties and worries. That makes it all the more important that as you look after us, we do everything we can to look after you. We've already taken a number of practical steps with our partners, looking to make sure that there is access to food supplies, to public transport, to free parking, to temporary accommodation if needed. And we've made the guidance on PPE as clear as possible, working with National Services Scotland and others to make sure that the PPE that you need gets to you when you need it. This hasn't always been easy or perfect, but we are absolutely committed to getting it right and fixing the glitches that arise as we go. But supporting and protecting the mental well-being of our workforce is also a priority. At the end of March, my colleague Claire Hockey, our Minister for Mental Health, wrote to all our NHS boards, local authorities and health and social care partnerships, asking them to take steps to improve mental health and well-being support for staff that made sense locally. Since then, significant examples have taken place, significant activity at a local level. I want to give two brief examples. In Lanarkshire, the NHS and the partnership set up a local 24-hour helpline for staff accessible to all health and social care staff, including those working in the care sector, in care homes and the third sector, and wellbeing hubs with chill-out zones in various locations and an access to a range of digital mental health and self-care resources. NHS Grampian has a telephone helpline in place. Service is available 7 days a week, and a psychological resilience hub open 7 days a week for all staff across the health and social care and third sector. Two examples of support that reflect what has happened across the country from our health boards and our social care partnerships and our local authorities, everything from making sure that hot meals are available to creating quiet spaces where people can go and simply draw breath. Now, adding to that, this morning we've launched a new national wellbeing hub for the whole health and social care workforce. The hub can be accessed at www.promise.scot. That's promise, Promis.scot. The hub is the first of its kind in the UK. Based on a psychological first aid approach, the hub provides advice on self-care and services to promote emotional and psychological well-being and address practical concerns. It also provides access to a bespoke digital coaching service to support health, well-being and resilience. With video clips sharing messages of support and experiences of those working and caring during the pandemic, you'll also find information to address the challenges we've heard about working in health and social care at this time. These include concerns for personal safety and that of family members, involvement in end-of-life care and decision-making, working in unfamiliar roles and settings, and the real and often overpowering feelings of grief and upset. Finally, the hub contains information for health and social care organisations to help them support their workforce. Promise is a collaborative project between NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde's Anchor Service and NHS Lothian's Resource Centre, who host the hub. And I want to thank them for hosting the hub and the many health and social care partners across Scotland who have worked together to make the hub a reality. The opening of this is a significant step forward in supporting our health and social care workforce. But as Health Secretary, let me be clear, I will never say that we have done enough. So we will continue to look at what more we can do in this area and in others, working with our partners, working to make sure that we understand your concerns, we understand what you need, and we act to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Health Secretary. I hope you agree, given everything health and care staff have been dealing with in recent weeks, that it was important to firstly establish this service and for the Health Secretary to set out detail of that today. Can I now go to questions from journalists? And first up today, Glenn Campbell from the BBC.
First Minister, the Scottish Secretary estimates that in Scotland we are perhaps a matter of days behind other parts of the UK in suppressing coronavirus. Is that an assessment you share? And on a point of clarification, if you live in somewhere like Annan and work in Carlisle and can't do your job from home, should you feel free to go back to work?
I'll come on to the second point. I don't know what the Secretary of State for Scotland is basing that comment on, so I guess in the first instance you would have to ask him. What I've said before, and will speak for myself again here, is that based on our assessment of the R number, we think that we are slightly higher than the rest of the UK. Certainly the rest of the UK on average. It may be that there are variations within England, but certainly slightly above in terms of a comparison with England. And that would suggest that we are slightly behind in terms of the infection curve, which, given that our first cases were identified and confirmed later, would make some sense. But whether you can put a set number of days on that, I think is much more uncertain. But what I've said also is that I will want to look very closely at the data that emerges in the coming days, the data around case numbers, hospital admissions, ICU admissions, and particularly the NRS figures that will come on Wednesday on numbers of deaths, to give me greater confidence that the virus is on a sustained downward trend, and that we then hopefully will see the R number reduce as well in Scotland. So that's the data I want to look at to give confidence that as we start to ease restrictions, we are not immediately going to see a resurgence of the virus that would tip us over that all-important 1 number in terms of R. For people in Scotland, if you live in Scotland, the law in Scotland applies, or if you are in Scotland, the law in Scotland applies, and the law says right now that you can only be out of your own home for essential reasons, which is essential work that can be done at home, getting food, getting medicine or exercise, and we've changed the guidance today to say that exercise now can be several times a day as opposed to just once a day. So if you live in the Scottish borders and you go, you come across the border to go to the supermarket, something you would do routinely, then you would certainly not be breaking the law if you were getting food. That's an essential purpose. If you live just south of the border but you work in an essential job in Dumfries and Galloway Hospital, for example, equally that is perfectly legitimate. But if you are coming into Scotland for reasons that are not covered by those essential purposes, then you potentially would be in breach of the law. So these things are reasonably straightforward when you consider the detail and when you listen to the messages that have been given. And if you live in Scotland right now, then if you're not working at the moment, or if you're working from home right now, then my advice is that you should continue with that right now. We are not encouraging more people to go back to work right at the moment. We do want to get businesses open and operational again as quickly as possible, but we must make sure, firstly, we've got confidence in the data that tells us we're not going to have a resurgence of the virus, and make sure that all of the guidance is in place to give workers confidence that they will be safe when they go back to work. And that is the kind of discussion and dialogue and work that is underway between the Scottish Government and different sectors of the economy right now. Ewan Petrie from STV.
First Minister, just picking up on what you said towards the end there, you say you don't want to see more businesses opening up at this stage in Scotland, but you're not compelling manufacturers and construction firms who are not carrying out essential work to stay closed. So if these companies can demonstrate they can put the necessary health and safety procedures in place, when can they consider getting back up and running?
Well, we are having those discussions with different sectors. We will be setting out sectoral guidance in the near future. I said last week that we are looking as priorities at construction, manufacturing and retail. That work is underway. Certainly, I know that in the construction sector, the Industry Leadership Group has also been doing some work about a phased restart. In terms of the position of the Scottish Government, it has not changed. So from the outset here, we have in regulations categories of business that are required by law to close. We have at the other end of the spectrum businesses that we know we need to see operational because they are crucial to the critical infrastructure of the country or to keeping food on the table and the lights on. The companies between those two ends of the spectrum, we have issued guidance and asked them to consider certain factors. Are they doing work that is essential or material to the well-being of the country? If so, can they allow workers to work from home? And if not, can they put in place social distancing? And if they can't answer these questions affirmatively, then they should not be open. That guidance is the same today as it was yesterday. And if any individual company wants further guidance or further help, we can't give bespoke guidance for every single company, but we will do our best to help companies with those decisions as we put in place guidance for the restart that we all want to see as soon as it is safe to do so. James Matthews from Sky.
Thanks very much, First Minister. You were asked about Scotland's R number yesterday. The key to progress is a reduction in the R number. Your opponents have written to you today asking if you will publish what Scotland's R number is. Can you tell me who knows what Scotland's R number is and why aren't they telling us?
I've already published it. All of these assessments will... Well, James, if you allow me to answer, you might get the answer. But all of these assessments come with a range. So we've said the advice we have right now is that it's between 0.7 and 1. And we will continue to look at the data to see how that changes. Remember, at the start of this, the R number was probably well in excess of 3, so it has come down. We've already published the range of the estimate that we are able to give. I'm not keeping information from people here. I'm as anxious to see all of these indicators go in the downward direction as everybody else is so that we can start to get back to normal. But we must do that in a way that gives... in which we have more confidence than we do just now that it's not so close to 1 that it will immediately tip over the edge. So we are looking at all of these things very closely. The data that will feed into the assessment of what the R number is the kind of data we look at very closely on a day-to-day basis. So, these are things that we have been very open and transparent about and will continue to be. And I think people watching at home would expect exactly that from the government as we take decisions that are unapologetically, given the severity of this virus and the impact it can have, erring on the side of caution so that we don't see it run out of control again too quickly. Peter Smith from ITV News.
Thank you very much, First Minister. You'd asked for confusion to be avoided and we've been contacted.
And that's where we leave Edinburgh. This is Sky News Today.